Let's look at 5 more trees in this video. We're going to look at black cherry, we're going to look at mulberry, we have blackgum, we have sugarberry, and we have yellow-poplar. So the first one we're going to start off with is the black cherry. Scientific name, Prunus serotina. Okay, so when looking at the black cherry, you can see it's going to have a dark green leaf above that's going to be roughly 2 to 6 inches long and 1 to 1.5 inches wide. Okay, again, you see the dark green and shiny above, and when you look carefully on these leaves, you can see that they are very finely serrated on the edge. Okay, so that edge has small little teeth there to help denote it. Some people want to get like a black cherry and maybe a persimmon mixed up. And this is one of the features that helps differentiate that is the black cherry has that tooth margin, whereas the persimmon does not. It has a smooth margin. Okay, when you look at black cherry in the wild, you're going to see it blooming in the springtime. It's going to have white blooms, so flowers with 5 white petals, and they are going to be fragrant. Okay, and then when you look at the bark of a black cherry, it's going to have black bark, and as it ages, it'll look like kind of burnt potato chips. But when you look at the twigs right here, and you look at them very carefully, the twigs have a very speckled appearance. And this is when I would advise you, if you're working with Tree ID, to make sure that you have a hand lens on site or in your person, because it'll greatly help you with some of the features that you might not be able to see with the naked eye. Okay, the black cherry, also not pictured here, has a fruit that is a green, smallish green ball that when ripe turns to a darker color or turns to black. So the black cherry, Prunus serotina. Okay, up next let's look at blackgum. Okay, the blackgum is another tree that some people like to mix up with persimmon and black cherry. One of the first things that I would mention is the leaf margin is smooth on the blackgum. Okay, so that's going to help narrow it down for you and go ahead and eliminate black cherry if you were trying to look at the differences. But the blackgum has a leaf that's 2 to 5 inches long. It's going to be ovate and shiny above. So we talked about the shiny leaf with the smooth margin, but the ovate means having a wider leaf more at the tip of the leaf versus the base. Okay, but it will still have that acuminate or very pointy tip. Okay, every now and then the blackgum can have a tooth on it. So don't let that trick you up if you see like a little tooth coming out of one of these leaves here or there, because every now and then it will have it. Another big feature for the blackgum is that the leaves at the tip, and you can see it very good here on both of these, but they have a whorl pattern. The twigs or the petioles, the leaves at the end, have this whorl pattern where they go around the stem in a cluster at the tip of the leaf. So that's known as a whorl pattern. Also, the twigs are going to grow at right angles. Twigs and branches are going to grow at right angles to the trunk when you're looking at the tree as a whole. So that is the blackgum, and the scientific name for the blackgum is Nyssa sylvatica. So Nyssa sylvatica blackgum. Up next, let's look at the mulberry. All right. There's several different species of mulberry, so we're not going to get too species specific. So some general characteristics of the Morus genus are going to be that the leaves are roughly 3 to 5 inches long. Okay, you can see this is a larger leaf, 2.5 to 4 inches wide, and it can have one lobe or it can have many lobes. Okay, you see all these aren't really lobed, but there can be lobes in some of the other species and even the same tree. You're looking at the margins. They're going to be tooth margins, have an acuminate tip again. When you feel the leaf itself, it is rough to the touch, very rough. Okay, The fruit itself is going to greatly resemble that of a blackberry. So if you see a tree that might have a blackberry looking fruit hanging from it, then that is more than likely a mulberry. There are some species like the red mulberry. It's going to be a reddish fruit that eventually will become ripe. When you break, another feature to this is when you break the stem, you're going to see these thin silky hairs on the broken surface. Again, another instance where a hand lens would be very nice to see these broken hairs, as you can kind of see some of them there, and even right here on this tip you'll see a hair there, but those thin silky hairs. So this is the mulberry, Morus species specific. So again, a good one to look at in tree ID. Okay, so let's look at the sugarberry up next. Scientific name for the sugarberry is Celtis laevigata. Starting off, let's look at the leaves. A lance-shaped leaf. Okay, so that basically meaning oblong at the bottom and tapering to a point at the tip. So you can see how this is kind of oblong or wider, and then it tapers down into that point at the tip for the sugarberry. Okay. Sugarberry can be very lightly serrated. You're going to look at it and say that it's a smooth margin, but you'll see these serrations on certain leaves as you go along that help denote sugarberry. As you can see one right here on this leaf. You see this little point here denotes that, can have that tooth margin, just one tooth or two teeth on that leaf. So when you look at it, you can see on this one you have a small nutlet that's about 1/4 of an inch in size that denotes it. Another thing when you're just looking at the sugarberry as a whole is it's going to have very warty bark. So you can see this is a piece of bark off of the sugarberry. It's going to have this warty appearance. It'll flake right off. Sugarberry, you'll see it a lot of the times in wet conditions. But that's the sugarberry, Celtis laevigata. All right, the 5th tree we're looking at in this series is going to be the yellow-poplar. Very popular, very common seen tree by in a lot of areas. But when you look at the yellow-poplar, you'll see a fairly shiny leaf that is 5 to 6 inches long and wide. Going to have around 3 to 4 lobes. A lot of people remember this because they say it's shaped like a cat's face. So when you look at it, you've got the whiskers here and here. You could draw a little smiley face there with a nose, put you a set of eyes there, and you can see the ears up here at these two tips. So shaped like a cat's face, a lot of people remember it that way. Another note is that when you're looking at the bud, another ID feature right here is you can see that the bud is shaped like a duckbill. So the duckbill shaped bud right there also helps denote yellow poplar. If I were to take all these leaves off and just leave you that, you should be able to get it from that identification. When talking about the fruit, it's going to be a narrow upright seed cone that basically is shaped like a tulip, and you can see that more tulip shape when the flower's in bloom before that fruit is left. The flower itself is going to be yellow to orange in color, okay, and it's going to have that tulip shape. Now the scientific name for yellow poplar is Liriodendron tulipifera, but it is also in the magnolia family. So if you look at a flower from a yellow poplar, it'll look very similar to that of a magnolia. Of course, it'll be a different color. It'll be that yellow to orange color, but it will have that magnolia-looking flower, just a different coloration. The yellow poplar's bark is very smooth when young. You can see this is not very smooth, but somewhat smooth. But as it gets older, the bark becomes whitish. and a little bit rougher, older looking. Okay, so that's yellow poplar. Again, shaped like a cat's face. So the 5 trees we saw in this video are the first one, lightly serrated, dark leaf here with a speckled stem. Okay, that is black cherry. The next tree we saw was another dark green above, but the ovate shaped leaf. Okay, also leaves in whorls right there. Okay, so all around the tips. Maybe have a tooth that might throw you off, but this one was blackgum. All right, the third one we saw was a species specific that had this tooth margin, larger leaf, a rough feel to it. It has a fruit that's shaped like a blackberry. Okay, mulberry or Morus, species specific. Fourth tree we saw, okay, had that small nutlet. You can see it's got that lance-shaped leaf. Okay, a lighter green, not too dark, but the lance-shaped leaf with that nutlet kind of helps give it away, and that is sugarberry. Also had the warty bark. And then the last tree we talked about in this segment was shaped like a cat's face, had a glossy look on the top side of the leaf, had that duckbill shaped bud, tulip shaped flower and fruit later on. This is yellow poplar. So that makes up the 5 trees in this segment.